The Arizona sun beat down at 110 degrees as Michael Harper carried a jug of ice water to the cooler he'd set near his front yard. He'd done this every summer since inheriting his grandmother's lakefront cottage. Kids stopped with bikes, joggers paused for relief, neighbors whispered thank yous. For him, it was simple. People needed hydration in the desert heat. That evening, as he refilled cups, a sharp voice sliced the calm. Vanessa Keith, the HOA President, strode up in heels and sunglasses, clipboard clutched like a weapon. She didn't smile. Instead, she jabbed her pen toward the cooler. "This is unsightly clutter. Remove it now." Michael blinked, sweat dripping from his brow. "It's water, Vanessa. People need it." Her lips curled. "And rules need enforcing." Neighbors froze, watching the collision begin in the driveway. The next morning, Michael opened his mailbox and found a crisp violation notice stamped in red, $650 fine for unsanctioned display of property. His jaw tightened as he read the clause, unsightly items visible from the street. It was absurd. A small cooler was now branded contraband. He walked back inside, heart pounding, clutching the letter like a declaration of war. That afternoon, as he refilled the cooler again, Vanessa appeared on the sidewalk, clipboard in hand. She raised her voice for everyone nearby. "Ignoring violations will only make things worse, Mr. Harper." Michael set down the jug slowly, eyes burning. Ignoring neighbors in danger is worse. A jogger stopped, uneasy at the tension. Vanessa leaned in, her perfume sharp in the heat. "You'll regret testing me." The words landed heavy, a promise of battle beyond paperwork. By the weekend, Michael was sitting in the community hall with 50 folding chairs filled. The HOA board sat at the front, Vanessa perched like a judge. He stood, holding the notice in one hand, his voice steady. "I put water out so no one collapses in 100-degree heat. That's not a violation, that's humanity." A ripple of applause broke from the back row, but Vanessa banged her gavel. "Rules are rules. If we allow one cooler, tomorrow we'll have inflatables, flags, political displays. Order collapses when exceptions are made." Michael shook his head. "Order collapses when compassion is punished." Gasps followed, tension stretching thin. A neighbor muttered, "She's gone too far." Vanessa's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, it wasn't about a cooler, it was about control. That night, Michael couldn't sleep. The letter sat on his desk like a scarlet warning, but his phone buzzed nonstop. Texts from neighbors offering support, some angry, others fearful. Rachel Nguyen, a single mother, knocked on his door with her son by her side. "I'll sign anything," she said firmly. "My boy fills his bottle there every day." Encouraged, Michael drafted a petition for the next board meeting. Word spread fast, and by morning, half the street had scribbled their names. Yet whispers drifted back. Vanessa had already started calling signatures invalid, claiming addresses were incomplete or spouses hadn't co-signed. Michael realized she wasn't just fighting him, she was trying to erase the community's voice. At dawn, he placed the cooler out again, a silent stand that meant more than words. The next board meeting was standing room only. Michael arrived with a petition clutched like a shield, Rachel and several neighbors at his side. Vanessa tapped her gavel with smug precision, refusing to meet his eyes. "This petition is inadmissible," she announced coldly. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Michael stepped forward, holding the papers high. "These names represent real families, people you're supposed to serve, not silence." Vanessa's jaw tightened. "The board decides what's valid, not the mob." He leaned across the table, voice low but sharp enough to cut through the chatter. "The board doesn't own this community, Vanessa. The people do." A cheer erupted from the back, shattering the gavel's rhythm. Vanessa froze, her authority shaken in public for the first time. Days later, another notice arrived, this time threatening legal action. The language dripped with hostility. "Failure to comply will result in lien proceedings." Michael crumpled the letter, fury rising. That evening, Vanessa arrived with 2 board members trailing her like bodyguards. Neighbors stepped onto porches, sensing the storm. Vanessa waved the document. "Refuse again, and you'll pay thousands." Michael's voice carried down the street. "You'd
put a lien on my home because I give water to strangers?" Vanessa smirked. "You're not special. The rules apply whether people faint in the sun or not." Gasps rose, murmurs swelling. Rachel shouted from across the street, "He's saving lives!" The divide sharpened. One side clapped, the other shook heads. Michael realized the HOA's tactics weren't just about him, they were about keeping everyone afraid.
The following afternoon, temperatures soared past 112 degrees. A delivery driver staggered toward Michael's cooler, collapsing against the fence. Michael rushed to help, pouring water into the man's trembling hands. Phones came out instantly, neighbors recording. Vanessa appeared moments later, heels clicking across the pavement. "Liability risk," she barked, pointing at the faint driver. "If he gets sick, it's on you." Michael spun, eyes blazing. "It's on you if he dies because you ripped this away." The crowd erupted, shouts, cheers, outrage. Someone yelled, "We stand with Michael." Another cried, "Enough of this nonsense." Vanessa's face flushed crimson. She raised her clipboard like a shield, but couldn't drown out the voices rising against her. For the first time, the balance of power visibly tipped. That night, headlights glared through Michael's window. Tires crunched as a black SUV idled outside his house. He stepped onto the porch, heart pounding, cooler sitting defiant by the fence. 3 men in HOA security polos climbed out, clipboards in hand. One muttered, "Remove it or tomorrow gets worse." Michael crossed his arms, the porch light catching his steel gaze. "Do it yourself, then explain to the cameras why you took water away." From across the street, Rachel appeared with her phone raised, recording every second. The SUV peeled away, but the message was clear. Vanessa was willing to intimidate him at night. Michael stood alone on the porch, cooler glistening under moonlight, a symbol too small to matter, yet powerful enough to provoke war. The next board meeting split the HOA like glass under pressure. Half the members whispered about legal exposure if Vanessa kept pushing, the other half nodded at her iron grip. Vanessa slammed papers on the table. "We are liable if someone dies from contaminated water," she declared. Michael stood, holding out a certified test report he'd paid for. "The water is clean, safer than the HOA's own fountains." Gasps filled the room. A younger board member whispered, "She's lying," loud enough for the front row to hear. Vanessa's glare silenced him, but the crack was visible. "You're destroying your own credibility," Michael warned. Vanessa snapped back, voice shaking. "I will not lose control of this community to you." That word, control, echoed in the hall like a confession. By the weekend, the fight spilled beyond meetings and letters. Families gathered at Michael's yard, bringing folding chairs and lawn signs. Water is not a crime. Kids laughed as they filled cups, parents stood defiantly, and phones streamed the scene live. Vanessa stormed down the street, clipboard shaking in her hand. "Disperse or face fines," she shouted, but her voice drowned under chants. "Let us drink! Let us drink!" Michael stepped forward, raising his hand. "This is what you're fighting against, Vanessa. Not me, them." Neighbors erupted in applause, their cheers rolling like thunder down the block. For the first time, Vanessa faltered, her power unraveling under the weight of unity. Michael felt it. The tide had turned, and there was no going back. Vanessa didn't retreat. She escalated. By Monday morning, Michael's mailbox overflowed with violation notices. Untrimmed shrubs, unauthorized gatherings, improper signage. Each fine stacked into thousands. Neighbors whispered about liens, foreclosure. That evening, Michael confronted Vanessa outside her house. "You're weaponizing paperwork against me," he said, fists clenched. She smirked, sunglasses flashing in the sunset. "You wanted war? This is war. I'll bury you under fines." Michael leaned closer, voice low. "Every paper you send me, I'll share with the neighborhood. Let's see who they believe." Vanessa froze for half a second before storming inside. For the first time, she looked like the one cornered. 2 days later, local reporters showed up, cameras rolling. Michael stood by his cooler, neighbors behind him holding signs. "This isn't just water," he told the reporter. "It's about dignity. The HOA thinks it owns our compassion." Vanessa rushed into frame, waving documents. "He's violating health codes," she shrieked. Michael calmly held up test results. "Certified clean. The only contamination here is corruption." The crowd cheered, drowning her out. A reporter whispered, "This is going viral." Vanessa's face twisted, realizing she wasn't just fighting Michael anymore. She was fighting public opinion and losing. Inside the next board meeting, tension boiled over. Members whispered, hands shaking as they glanced at the overflowing crowd outside. Vanessa slammed her gavel. "Order! We must maintain authority." Michael stood in the back, holding a stack of signatures. "Half the neighborhood wants your resignation." Murmurs erupted. One treasurer slammed his folder shut. "She's cost us everything: insurance threats, lawsuits, national shame." Vanessa pointed a trembling finger at Michael. "This is your fault." Michael's voice cut back, calm but razor sharp. "No, Vanessa. This is your reflection." Gasps filled the room. Vanessa's power was cracking, not from him alone, but from the board she thought she controlled. That night, headlights again pierced Michael's yard. This time, Vanessa herself marched up, clipboard in hand, fury shaking every step. Michael stepped outside, neighbors quietly appearing with phones recording. She shouted, "Remove the cooler or I'll have you evicted." Michael raised his arm toward the cameras. "You're threatening eviction over water in front of the whole neighborhood?" Vanessa jabbed her finger into his chest. "I'll end you, Michael. Don't test me." He didn't flinch. "You already lost, Vanessa. Look around." The crowd's silence was louder than any cheer. Every lens pointed at her, every eye watching her unravel. She staggered back, realizing the spectacle had flipped against her. The next morning, an emergency vote convened. Neighbors filled the hall, voices buzzing with rage. Vanessa stood trembling at the podium, makeup smudged, still clinging to her clipboard. Michael entered quietly, cooler in hand, setting it at the center of the room. "This is what she tried to destroy," he said. "Not a cooler, our humanity." The vote was swift. Removal of Vanessa as president effective immediately. Gasps, then cheers erupted as she stormed out, shouting, "You'll regret this!" But no one followed. Michael stood surrounded by neighbors clapping, some with tears. The battle wasn't just won, it had exposed every crack in her empire. Vanessa didn't vanish quietly. Within a week, Michael received a thick envelope, a civil lawsuit demanding $100,000 in damages for defamation and property value loss. He read it aloud to his lawyer, chuckling bitterly. "She's suing me for exposing the truth?" In court, Vanessa stormed in with a polished attorney and her trademark clipboard. Michael sat calm, documents stacked neatly beside him. The judge peered down. "Mrs. Steele, you claim slander, yet multiple certified records show your citations were falsified." Vanessa jumped to her feet. "He humiliated me! He poisoned this community!" Michael leaned into the microphone. "I gave them water. You gave them fear." Gasps rippled through the courtroom, the balance tilting firmly against her. The trial erupted into a spectacle. Vanessa's attorney tried spinning her actions as dedication to community standards. Michael's side countered with neighbor testimonies, videos of her midnight rants, and Emily, the treasurer, producing financial records that revealed Vanessa's embezzlement. When confronted, Vanessa snapped, slamming her hands on the table. "You're all liars. I built this place." The judge's gavel pounded. "Control yourself, Mrs. Steele." Michael stayed steady, speaking only when asked. "We're not here because she enforced rules. We're here because she abused power." The jury locked onto his composure against her explosions. Vanessa, once untouchable, now looked like a villain caught in her own storm. After days of heated testimony, the jury filed back in. Vanessa's face was pale, lips trembling. The foreman stood. "We find for the defendant, Mr. Michael Carson, and order restitution of $50,000 to the community fund, plus removal of Mrs. Steele from any HOA office permanently." Cheers erupted outside the courthouse. Vanessa screamed, "This isn't justice, it's revenge." The judge shot back, "No, Mrs. Steele, this is accountability." Michael closed his eyes, exhaling the relief he'd been holding for months. Around him, neighbors hugged, crying, clapping, their trust slowly returning. The cooler had started a war, but it had ended with a verdict echoing louder than her clipboard ever could. Weeks later, the neighborhood transformed. Children ran by the lake without fear of fines. Neighbors gathered around Michael's cooler, now symbolic, sipping water and laughter. Emily, elected as the new HOA president, promised transparency. No more hidden fines, no midnight harassment. Michael smiled as Tom clapped his shoulder. You didn't just win, you freed us. Michael raised his cup. This cooler doesn't belong to me anymore. It belongs to everyone. Applause filled the air. For the first time, the neighborhood didn't feel like a battlefield. It felt like home again. Vanessa's house sat dark at the end of the street, a warning of what greed can cost. Months later, Michael was invited to speak at a regional HOA summit. Standing before rows of worried homeowners, he told his story not as a victim, but as proof of resistance. HOAs exist to serve communities, not to strangle them, he said. Stand together, document everything, and never let fear silence you. His words drew thunderous applause. Back home, his lake shimmered under the sun. The cooler still sat at the edge of his lawn, a quiet monument to defiance. Michael watched kids splash, families laugh, neighbors live freely. Vanessa's reign had ended, but her tyranny had sparked something stronger, unity. And in that unity, Michael found peace at last.